Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 11th meeting, 2020 of the Town Council Charter Review Committee. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, this meeting is being videotaped and audio recorded, as well as being remotely broadcasted via a Zoom meeting, webinar. If there's anyone in our viewing audience who is taping this meeting, would you please announce yourself? Seeing and hearing none. A few announcements just for the public. Our August 4th meeting never happened because of the storm and the power going off. And two, Bill Fonseca will not be attending tonight's meeting, and Phil Adams will be late. And we say hello to Andy Fraser and to President Michael Kane. And who would like to take minutes today?
I'll take minutes.
Okay, Ralph Page will take the minutes. And we have minutes of July 28th, 2020 for approval. Do I see and hear a motion?
Motion to accept?
Motion made by Andy and seconded by
Second.
Tom. Oh, Jeff. Take your pick, Ralph.
It's Jeff.
Any discussion? Yes, Miss Marilyn.
Just one quick addition. As far as members being present, when, since I'm an alternate, I should be identified as an alternate. Rather, because if you look at the members present, it looks like we had 8 people at the last meeting, and that violates the charter. So if someone could just remember to say that I'm an alternate, that'll make things clear. That's all.
Andy, you made the motion. You accept that as an amendment?
Yes.
And who was the second, Ralph or
Jeff.
Tom? Jeff. Jeff, you accept that as an amendment?
Yes. Yes.
Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor? Marilyn Richards,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
Ralph Page,
Yes.
Andy Fraser,
Yes.
and Larry Levine, yes. So those are approved.
Come on me, Larry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. Not seeing you, I blanked you out. I'm sorry. And Jeff Bosworth?
Yes.
I'm sorry, unanimous.
Excuse me, Larry.
Yes, yes, Jeannie.
I have a comment that when the minutes are approved to be amended, if the author of whatever those minutes are could make that change and send it to me so I could post the minutes in the amended form.
Jeff, can you do that?
Yes.
Okay,
Excellent.
thank you.
Okay. Okay. We had left off last time under Article 2, Section 5, I'm sorry, Section 6, the first, second, third, fourth, 5th paragraph. Okay. However, there were some issues that I think we wanted to speak to. And one of the issues was under the conflict between Section 3, where the president appoints all members of committees of the council, whether special or standing. And then in Section 5, where it said the council shall appoint, among other things, individuals any other ad hoc committees as it deems necessary. And I think you all got a list, or, hi, Phil. Phil Adams is here.
Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Um,
Phil.
So,
And so I want to bring back that discussion because we got a list, I think, of all the committees, standing committees that Jeannie provided us.
I sent it to you, Larry. Did you send it to the group? Because I didn't send it to the group.
Did I send it to you, the group?
No,
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
didn't receive it.
I know I sent it to Michael Kane, but I can just quickly give you a list. Jeannie had the standing committees, she had planning matters and financial oversight. And then ad hoc committees were licensing, bylaw review, and then this pursuant, and then a town manager performance evaluation and the communications committee, which have not met in a while. So the discussion had revolved around whether the president should make appointments, whether the decision of the president somehow should be joined with a vice president, whether there be a way to overrule the president's decision. And then there was discussion whether there should be a difference between standing committees and ad hoc committees. So people, I'm going to open up the floor for discussion on all those issues, but somehow we have to reconcile the two sections. And I wanted to ask Ralph and Michael, how is it now? Even though it gives authority to the council, I'm sorry, Marilyn as well, is the president making all the appointments?
So Larry, I'll start. To my knowledge, the president is making the appointments to what I would consider all standing committees. The only committee I would have said that wasn't standing was probably the town manager search committee. But I do believe that even though the president at the time brought everyone's name to the council, she still made the decision on who to appoint. By me bringing up this originally, what my concern was is if we have a small subject, something simple that we want to throw 3 counselors on, it'll take them 1 or 2 quick meetings to make a recommendation. To me, that's an ad hoc committee. And that should be done at a town council meeting by the council. It's just you look around who's available to be on it. Okay, you 3 are on it. Let us know in 2 meetings what you've come up with. It may just be research or something on that idea. The standing committees, I personally think that, like Phil said, either the president or a combination of the president and vice president should appoint the standing members.
Anyone else? Yes, Jeannie.
So I just sent you all the list that I sent to Larry and Mike originally, if you have access to your email. But I had planning matters and financial oversight standing, and the rest ad hoc committees, because that's how they're outlined in the council rules. So I just tried to correlate, standing and ad hoc with the council rules, how they're outlined there.
I have a question for the committee. In the powers given to the council, it only speaks of appointment to either regional or district boards and any other ad hoc committees that it deems necessary. Whereas other committees, standing committees, would be the special or standing. So the question I have is, if standing are established, then the president has the power to appoint that. What does special mean? Is that different than ad hoc?
I don't think so.
Do you see where I'm pointing to?
No.
All right, in section 3, in the 4th paragraph, I'm sorry, no, 3rd paragraph.
Okay, I got it.
So in the 3rd sentence, which begins in the 3rd line.
Right, I see it. Have we had a special committee?
I don't know, but a special committee is the same thing as ad hoc committees.
I would say so.
I agree.
Yeah, I would
Not
agree.
permanent.
So, and we have no definition what special or ad hoc committees are. So there's the rub. So, yes, Jeff. Jeff, are you there?
Yeah,
Did you raise your hand?
no,
Okay. So I guess the question I would have is, on the ad hoc committees, you as counselors have made a joint decision on appointment. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. The president still has made the decision on ad hoc committees?
Mhm.
Yes,
Yes, Michael.
yes. Over the past 4 years, I've worked through, obviously, 2 different presidents, and all committees have been appointed by the president and the president only.
Yes,
Yeah, I think-
Jeannie.
What Kathy would usually say, the president, she would say, if anybody's interested in serving on any of these committees, to let her know.
Uh-huh.
And then if not, then she would appoint somebody to fill the spot. Is that what you recall, other counselors?
Mhm.
She would
Yes.
share- So,
I'm agreeing with the process that you just described, but the decision has been solely made by the president on who those members would be.
All right, so the wording allowing the council to appoint ad hoc committees really is not in practice.
That's true. That's true.
So I asked then, why wouldn't you delete that portion of the power of the council?
I would support deleting that, that particular language and having all committee appointments at the responsibility of the president. There's not been a problem that I'm aware of, and I think we're creating issues that we don't need to struggle with. All committee appointments, the president. We've volunteered to serve on committees, and usually our interest has been recognized. So I don't see an issue.
Anyone else?
I would agree with Marilyn. I don't see an issue, but if we're going to strike that, then the only thing is, when you go back to the president, I'd
Mhm.
like it to say whether special, ad hoc, or standing. And that way there it covers everything.
And Larry,
Yes, Bill.
just for discussion purposes, the reason I brought it up was I felt that 2 individuals versus 1 was better when you're putting these committees together, because you have different outlooks from different perspectives. And I think what you're doing is based on what the president already has under their authority, that this would be a good opportunity for the vice president to have the ability to get involved with this process. So I think it's a bad situation to have just the president. Even though we have not had any issues, I'm just looking to the future and saying, this way here, we can correct ourselves from having an issue. That's where I'm coming from.
Other comments? Yes, Michael.
I would just like to add, there really hasn't been any issues, but that being said, it would depend on the pool of candidates. So if you're trying to fill a committee and you need 5 people and only 5 people have applied, you're not going to have a problem. I would see the problem arising when you have more than one on one person deciding who's going to get the appointment and who will not get the appointment.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Ralph?
So I don't disagree with Phil and his thought process. I'm just wondering who has the ultimate say. If you have the president who wants one person, the vice president who wants a different person, who breaks the tie? Do they?
What I would say on that, Ralph, is you bring it to the full council. It's my understanding that when the president makes these selections, the president lets the council know after the fact. And I think that the council should be notified before the fact when these committees are put together. What I mean by that is the president puts a committee together, sends letters out, putting people on the committee, and then the president tells the council. And that's after the fact. The council has no input into that. So I thought if you had 2 people, and if they're both in agreement, then no problem. If there's a situation where they're not in agreement because one wants one and one wants the other, then you'd go to the full council before the fact and say, this is what the issue is, and let the full council decide who's going to be on that committee. I'm just looking for transparency.
Yes, Marilyn?
It's my understanding that for the town manager search committee, there were a number of people that applied, and I think there were maybe 2 that weren't selected in that particular process. However, I do understand how the president went through the selection in terms of trying to create a broad representation of citizenry and a town hall employee, you know, a member of the community, that sort of thing, in this process. And the list came to the council, and then I believe, and that's when people were notified, and then letters went out. So I just wanted to correct that perception. They weren't notified, and then the council was the last. The council was part of the process after the list was created by the council president, and nobody had any objections.
Marilyn, without getting into a tit for tat, this committee here was appointed by the president, notified the town council after the fact, and I wasn't even on the committee because of a situation that my email got lost. So that's a situation that had that been done before the fact, maybe one of the town councils would have known that my name was in the arena. So that's the other side of the coin.
Actually, you know, as far as this process goes, that's how I'm involved with this, because at the time, you know, yes, I understand that your situation got lost somewhere in the translation, but we needed one more person at the council meeting. I had heard we needed one more person. So that's why I raised my hand and said, I'll be happy to serve.
Yep.
So I don't think anybody's trying to slight anybody. I know how busy the council president is. I know how busy the council is in certain areas. And where we have not had any issues. Now, granted, you happen to fall through the cracks. You know, that was a misfortune. It's not deliberate.
No, I understand that, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in the situation, and I'm looking forward for the next 10 years, that if we had 2 is better than 1 for transparency purposes. That's where I'm coming from. I'm looking for the future. I'm not talking about the past or the present.
Okay. Jeff? Just leaning?
Can you see me?
Okay.
Because
All right.
I'm not showing up on the screen, so if you can see me, that's good, but I was just leaning, yeah. Getting more
Okay.
comfortable in the chair.
I
Okay.
can't see you, Jeff, whatever that's worth.
Okay. Any other discussion? So I think that we have to resolve the conflict between those two sections. So do I hear motion or motions on both section 3 and section 5, the conflicting powers? Yes, Marilyn?
For section 3, third paragraph, I believe, third sentence, I move the following words be added, that the president shall appoint all members of committees of the council, whether special, ad hoc, or standing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ralph Page, second. Discussion.
The only discussion is, I think for transparency purposes, it should be president and vice president. I don't know if we have to wait and vote on this or amend the motion.
Well, you could amend the motion if you so desire.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do, if that's
All right,
acceptable.
so just say your amendment.
Well,
Your
mine
motion to,
would be the same as Maryland, except I would have president and vice president doing the appointments of these committees.
okay, so Phil Adams has made a motion to amend the motion made by Marilyn Richards to read the president and vice president, and the rest of the sentence is the same. Is there a second to that amended motion?
I'll second it for further discussion.
Ralph Page seconds it. Discussion?
My only concern is that we may be muddying up the process, having two people trying to decide instead of the one. I do understand Phil's concerns. I think that would be something that may be addressed under council rules and regulations better than in the charter.
Any other discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor of the amended motion? Marilyn Richards,
No.
Tom Christensen,
No.
Ralph Page,
No.
Andy Frazier,
No.
Phil Adams,
Yes,
Jeff Bosworth,
No.
Larry Levine votes no. Now we have on the floor the original motion, which read the president shall appoint, and the rest of the sentence as stated in the original motion. Further discussion on that motion? Seeing and hearing none. Those in favor? Marilyn Richards,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
Ralph Page,
Yes.
Andy Frazier,
Yes.
Phil Adams,
no,
Jeff Bosworth,
Yes.
Larry Levine, yes. So the vote is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 6 to 1. 6 to 1 in favor. All right, so now go back to that third paragraph in section 5, granting the powers to the council, among others, to appoint ad hoc committees. Do I hear a motion addressing that issue?
I'll give it a shot. I move to remove from section 5, paragraph 3, and any other ad hoc committees as it deems necessary to the orderly conducting of town business and policy, except as authorized by this charter as provided by general law. And I guess for grammatical purposes, we should add after Article 3, comma and individuals who serve, blah, blah, blah.
Second.
All right. The second was by Phil?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're deleting from the, after authorities,
Hmm.
the rest of the paragraph.
Correct. That was the motion anyway.
Okay. My question is to the entire committee. Is the wording except as authorized by this charter or as provided by general law affecting the prior appointment powers as well, not just the ad hoc committees?
That was my concern as well, Larry. You know, I thought, you know, I know what Tom was trying to do. We need to get ad hoc committees out of that sentence, but I was wondering if the previous wording was relative to what's the last part of the sentence, and we should leave this as provided by this, you know, charter and the general law. So I'm not sure how the wording should go, but I think ad hoc committees should come out, but the rest of the language should stay.
So is that thought then it should stop at policy? We can leave in except as authorized by this charter or as provided by general law? Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, I don't see any problem leaving that except clause in. Jeannie, you see any problem with that?
No, I was thinking the same thing.
So Larry, wouldn't it be easier if we just removed "and any other ad hoc committee"? Because the conducting of business for orderly conducting of business and policy is a part of the delegates of the town to governing boards, advisory boards and stuff. So I think the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I guess that's okay. Because you've already put the appointment of ad hoc under president. And I don't think the wording after committees hurts.
I agree with Ralph that just deleting any other ad hoc committee.
So I have one other thing, Larry. Just sitting here thinking off of the top of my head. What happens when the council at a meeting wants to create an ad hoc committee to look at something? The president doesn't agree with them and says, I'm just not going to appoint it.
Well, under the charter, the ultimate power lies in the council to remove the president. And I think that's a supermajority vote during the year.
It is.
So, I mean, that's the
ultimate. If
the option available.
I don't think it'll happen, but I'm just thinking outside the box a little bit.
That's the ultimate power. So, Tom, would you accept a change in the wording?
Yes.
Just remove and
Just don't
any
make me
other
read it
ad hoc
again, Larry.
committees? What's that?
Said, just don't make me read it again. I accept.
Okay. And Ralph, you were the second. Will you accept that change in the wording?
I thought Phil seconded it.
I second it.
I mean, Phil.
Yes, no problem.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor to change the third paragraph under section 5 to remove the words "and any other ad hoc committee," and also to insert after Article 3 in the second line the word "and."
Larry, we lost you most of what the changes were. We didn't hear.
All right. All right. How come Phil didn't yell at me?
Because I could hear you, Larry.
Yeah. All
I
right.
can read lips.
So the motion, as I understand it, is in the third paragraph of section 5, in the second line, after Article 3, to insert the word and in the third line, after the word authorities, to delete the words and any other ad hoc committees.
Okay, that's correct.
We all in agreement? I'm not in agreement of approving it, just what the motion is. Okay, seeing and hearing none. Any other discussion? All those in favor of that motion? Marilyn Richards,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
Ralph Page,
Yes.
Andy Fraser,
Yes.
Bill Adams,
Yes,
Jeff Bosworth,
Yes.
Larry Levine, yes. So that's unanimous. Now, Jeannie, we had a question about, in the section 6, about bylaws and about whether it's a public hearing or a public meeting. And in the interim, since our last meeting, I looked at general bylaws, I looked at state statutes, and although I'm not a lawyer, I could not find any requirement on bylaw amendments that requires public hearings. As a courtesy, Jeannie, the council was conducting public hearings on
Yes.
bylaw amendments.
Yeah, I don't, for general bylaws, I
Yeah.
don't see either where it's required, but they have been holding public hearings, and I think even if it's not required, it should be done as a courtesy and transparency, not to overuse that word, but it gives the public input on any general bylaws being created or changed. So I don't know if you want to add that. Is that something you're getting at?
Well, that's up to the committee. I'm just throwing it out to let them know of the research we've done, because the discussion came up about that issue, and that is in the third paragraph, whether we should insert the requirement for a public hearing. Yes, Miss Marilyn.
In tonight's council agenda, under public hearings, we have at 6:30 a proposed bylaw change for ground-mounted photovoltaic systems moratorium. And this would require, and correct me, Jeannie, 2 public notices in a newspaper.
Yeah, that's for zoning. Yeah.
So for transparency, it gets out to the community. And as a matter of public hearing, then as according to the charter, it gets read twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an effort to try to keep the information transparent to the community so they know what we're voting on.
So you could have something in the charter that equals the same procedures as a zoning bylaw up to that point with the council. I don't know how the council feels about that. I don't think there's any harm in it.
Michael?
So I'll chime in. The one we have tonight on the solar is a zoning bylaw, and it's required under Mass State law, under Zoning Act, that a public hearing be held by the planning board.
Correct.
So I think the process has always been, when it comes to the council, that the council's usually held a public hearing. I just assumed it was necessary until I really jumped in again and started rereading this and realized, geez, there is no requirement. In certain situations, the 2 public notices and a vote would probably work on 7 out of 10 items, because we don't even have any people showing up to our meetings or Zoom meetings or anything. but it's on those rare occasions, like we have one coming up for the development of Chestnut Street, that if we didn't hold a public hearing, the town would be super up in arms, and I would understand why, because their voice needs to be heard on it. So I don't know if there's a balance in it. I mean, I would rather err on the side of caution and require a public hearing. I mean, it costs a little bit more for the town in the advertising, but at least that way there, the public is allowed to weigh in, not just under public comments.
I agree.
Any other thoughts? At which the bylaw amendment has to be read at 2 separate meetings. I just thought of something. Does it have to be consecutive meetings? That's one question. And should it be consecutive meetings? And if you have to have 2 meetings anyway to read, which one will have the public hearing?
First one.
Say it again?
The first meeting should be the opening of the public hearing with the first reading,
Okay.
is my opinion. And I don't think it should say 2 consecutive meetings, because there could be some unique situation where the council meets twice in a row where they aren't able to, maybe they have to continue the public hearing to a further date that has a meeting in between. And that's not consecutive.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to chime in, Larry.
Yep.
I'm not sure if the public hearing should be at the first reading. Typically, the first reading is to announce the bylaw to everyone and say, hey, we're proposing this bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
It's advertised in the paper. You do a quick reading of it, and then you set a public hearing date so that the public can have the input and all. You don't have to vote on it at that meeting. You can always delay the vote once you've brought in all the public input, but.
Okay.
I tend to agree with Ralph on that, because if you want to get it out there and let people have time to digest it before you have the public hearing on it, and
Okay.
would be my thought.
So when a notice is sent out to the paper advertising that a bylaw amendment is forthcoming, will you announce the date and the time when it will be read or heard, Jeannie?
No, because I looked up the last time that happened, was it the marijuana, or because that was a long time ago. Did we have anything else we would have to publish? All the liquor license rules and regulations, maybe? And I think it's just out there for the town of East Long Meadow. And it doesn't have the legal notice. It's not even the legal notice section of the paper.
We have a bylaw for this committee, Jeannie?
Say it again?
Charter review.
Was that
Yep.
was that the bylaw?
Yep, that was published. Yep.
Okay. Any other comments, or do I hear a motion, or you could leave it the way it is?
More discussion, Larry.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to look at what paragraph where we may, it says prior to final passage, each introduced bylaw shall be read at 2 separate council meetings. I mean, and that's what's happening. And it's being called a public hearing, and whether, and I think that it should be a public hearing. But I'm also concerned about the next to the last paragraph that discusses the affirmative vote of a majority of the full council membership, except as otherwise provided by the general laws or this charter, shall be necessary for the final passage of any bylaw. And we know that the general bylaw, it's a majority vote, I believe, and a zoning bylaw, it's a supermajority vote. And I brought up the last time, do we want to be more specific about the supermajority vote? Because to me, that's really important.
Okay, that's a separate issue. Can
Okay.
we go
but that
back to the
was-
first?
That was the piece that I was the most concerned about all of
Okay.
this. You know, we're publishing it twice in
Right.
either the Reminder or Business West. And so the public notice is getting out there, the two opportunities for residents to be heard. Not that, you know, I don't know that at the first reading that we generate discussion from the public, but I suppose we could. But the publication, the two readings, and the either majority vote or supermajority vote are what's important.
Okay. Yes, Tom?
So are we looking, would a suggestion maybe to add after two separate council meetings, we add a phrase like the second of which shall be a public hearing?
You could propose that.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out where the conversation's going.
I know it's all over there, but I think that makes sense. As long as we document that there will be a public hearing, I think that would be a good place to put it.
Right. Okay. Because like Jeff and Ralph said, the second one probably makes the most sense, in my opinion.
Okay. So if there's no other discussion, is there any motion to be presented to the committee?
You're up, Tom.
Yeah. You want me to go for it again?
Go for it. You're doing good.
All right. I move, we add language to section 6, paragraph 3. After, at the end of the first sentence, two separate council meetings, the second of which shall be a public hearing, comma, and then the rest of the paragraph shall remain.
Second.
Second by Marilyn. Pardon me while I write. We have a motion on the floor to add in the third paragraph of section 6, the requirement of a public hearing at the second meeting where the bylaw amendment would be read. Discussion. Yes, Jeannie.
Do you want to get into specifics like the, for the zoning, you know, notice of the public hearing must be published in a newspaper each of 2 successive weeks, you know, not less than 14 days before the day of the hearing? Do you want to get into all that detail with this or not?
No.
Well, you have in the first paragraph, the last sentence, a requirement to town bulletin board website.
Right, not less than 7 days prior to its second reading.
Yeah, but it
Okay.
doesn't, and you have, it shall be
That's the
published.
publication though, not the notice of the public hearing.
Well, if you're gonna, if you, well, it's not defined public hearing. The second of which shall be a public hearing to be published as stated in the first paragraph of this section. Does that sound right, Tom?
So when it comes to a public hearing, that's
Yep.
understood that you have to do all that stuff, right? So if you write. public
No,
hearing-
it doesn't.
Ah.
A public hearing, like if you had a zoning bylaw change or a liquor license, the statutes require how many days in advance you have to publish it, whether you have to publish it consecutive weeks, etc. Merely stating it's a public hearing doesn't say that you're required to give X number of days in the publication. But if you combined it with the first paragraph, which would say,
No, that's second reading.
And hear you, Larry.
oh, you can't hear me? Uh, You know, it doesn't even say in the first paragraph how long before the publication has to be. I'm sorry to bring these issues up.
We have to assume it's the reminder and it's published every Thursday. I know things can change, but I don't know if that's going to be changing.
Well, you could just add wording, Tom, after the sentence, the clause you suggested with advanced publication to be provided as stated in the first paragraph. Unfortunately, it doesn't say how long the publication might, I don't see it there.
Hmm.
Ralph, why didn't you think of this a few
I
years
don't
ago?
see it either.
Well, a few years ago, we had agreed that we would keep the charter extremely broad so that our rules and regulations could govern the rest.
Um, Well, you want me to make a suggestion?
Rewrite section 6.
And after the clause that Tom said, and notice of such hearing shall be published in a local publication or newspaper not less than 7 days prior to that public hearing.
Sounds good. Second.
All right, and I have to write that in.
Marilyn, you look like you have a question.
If we're publishing it 7 days prior to the public hearing,
Yeah,
how does the notice of the first reading get published?
Under the public meeting.
Just in the public, not in the newspaper, but because right now we're doing it, correct me, Jeannie, we're doing it twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're doing it, at least once before the first meeting and then another before the second meeting, or I'm
Yeah.
not sure the timing.
So for the timing, that's why I say in general, I need like 3 weeks notice to put anything in the reminder because I have to get it in Monday for the Thursday issue. And then it shows up for the next, the first and second Thursday.
And
I
in,
don't know why you couldn't combine in the one notice to save money as well, where you have the first reading will be X
Right.
date, and then the second reading will be on such and such a date, and on the second reading, a public hearing will be held at such and such a time.
historically, our public notices have always been twice, 1 week apart. I know you're talking about saving money, and I'm not
Well,
against saving money.
Because those are like zoning or liquor license, that's what the state law requires.
Right.
You can make up your own law on that issue.
Because the planning board would be dealing with the state statute for zoning. Is that what you're saying? And when
Yeah, and it's quite specific, the publications, whether it be special permits, zoning bylaw amendments, variances, et cetera, for the ZBA. Liquor licenses the same way, who you have to give notice to, et cetera. I couldn't find anything in state law that governs this. And so I presume you can set your own parameters and they would have to be reasonable.
as the legislative body of the community, prior to the change in our government, when we had and I'm using zoning bylaw as an example, when we had a zoning bylaw change, there were 2 publications before the planning board. The issue was heard, presentation was made at town meeting, and the only notice was the warrant. And it wasn't, it's not a public hearing at that point. It was our public meeting, I guess. So with the 2 hearings before the planning board for a zoning bylaw and then coming to the council for approval, it could be, just as we listed it, the second public reading is going to be a public hearing, and one notice would probably suffice. Does
Yes,
that make sense?
I mean, you're not required even to have a public hearing.
I know.
So, and there's therefore no requirement how often or if you have to publish it all. You're just trying to provide the public with notice besides putting on an LCAT, et cetera.
Right.
So notice it said public hearing shall appear in a local publication or newspaper not less than 7 days.
So
I'm
Larry,
listening.
if I'm reading this correctly, the first reading doesn't have to be published in the paper. It just says, if I'm reading it correctly, that at some point it has to be published in the paper not less than 7 days prior to the second reading, which is what we were suggesting for a public hearing. So,
Right.
I mean, as far as the cost to advertise and all, we advertise it once in the paper 7 days before the public hearing, and that's the notice.
And if you publish even a synopsis of a new bylaw, the size of it, they're not going to put it with the legal notices. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like an advertisement, but then they have this certain legal notice section. So they're thought of as two different things.
Okay, so what are you suggesting, Jeannie?
I don't know. I mean, I think you could have the bylaw that's supposed to be published. At that point, you can have the heading, first reading to take place at, this council meeting. I don't even, do you have to even say when the second reading is going to take place? Because what if something comes up and it can't be the next meeting? Like I said, maybe it's a different meeting.
Well, I would leave that. I don't know that you have to have consecutive meetings.
Right.
If
do
you
you want
put
it not
if
the
you
first
put the
reading?
notice when the second and the public hearing will be.
But did you want to have, with the publication of the bylaw, any kind of verbiage that tells you when the first reading is going to be? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I would suggest when you do the publication, you combine everything. When the first reading will be and the second reading will be such and such date at such time, which will be a public hearing.
So you just have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you the legal notices, the costs have gone up dramatically in the last 6 months, even in the reminder. Because they were bought out by the Springfield newspaper. And it's very expensive.
It's ridiculously expensive.
Yes, sir. So, Tom, you made a motion that spoke of the second of which of the reading shall be a public hearing, and notice of said public hearing shall appear in a local publication or newspaper not less than 7 days prior to the public hearing. And then it continued.
I'm okay with that amendment, Larry.
Okay. And who was the second on that?
Me?
Or Marilyn, you accepted that change?
Mhm.
Okay. Further discussion? Jeff? Just leaning?
Just leaning.
Okay. All right. So the motion on the floor as stated. All those in favor, Marilyn Richards,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
Ralph Page,
Yes.
Andy Frazier,
Yes.
Bill Adams,
Yes.
Jeff Bosworth,
Yes,
Larry Levine, yes. So that's unanimous.
and we're almost out of time.
Yes, sir. We are out of time. Unfortunately, Marilyn, we'll get to that next 2 paragraphs where you can be specific about zoning bylaw amendments
Okay.
or even
General bylaw.
in special permits. Isn't that required as well?
Correct. But that's planning board.
All right, so you don't have to be that specific here. Okay,
You have to be supermajority for the vote of a zoning bylaw.
okay. All right, so we have to adjourn.
Oh, shame.
Parting is such sweet sorrow.
So moved.
Who made the motion? Jeff?
Yes.
Is there a second to adjourn?
Second.
Phil has any discussion? All those in favor? We have to do roll call on this, even on this, right, Jeannie?
We got a meeting next week, Larry?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yes.
Okay.
Same time, same place, the 18th,
Okay.
Okay.
4:30. Marilyn Richards, you vote in
Yes.
favor of adjourning. Tom?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Larry? Yes. Have a good week, people.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Bye.
meeting. Thank
All right,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.